Hi, I'm Donald Lewis, Professor of Entomology at Iowa State University.
And I'm Laura Jesse, and I run the Plant and Insect Diagnostic Clinic here at Iowa State.
And we're going to talk a little bit about pollination of cucurbits, particularly as it relates to research done here at Iowa State University with money from the Specialty Crops Research Initiative. This is an ongoing research project that has unlocked a whole lot of information that we're going to share over the next several years as we continue to find out how crops are grown and pollinated, particularly here in the Midwest. Pollinators are insects that help plants pollinate, that is, move pollen from the male part of the flower to the female part of the flower. The movement of that pollen allows the seeds to develop inside the flower. And when the seeds are developing, the fruit will develop. So whether you're talking about growing melons or cucumbers or squash or apples, the pollination is an essential step that has to happen to get a good yield. Some plants are pollinated by wind or by gravity, corn for example, but for many of our vegetable crops it's essential to have somebody or something move the pollen from the male flower to the female flower, and that's where insects come in. We think of honeybees as the workhorses of pollination, but our research has discovered that there are lots of other pollinators that are out there, and these could be bees, other kinds of bees, and wasps, and ants, and even butterflies will help with this process. But it turns out the second most important group following the honeybees are the solitary bees. Solitary bees are ones that we have been learning the most about. And one of the things we've discovered is that there are lots of these out there that we really weren't giving credit to. Solitary bees are often referred to by the general public as sweat bees. They're fairly small. They're frequently brightly colored. Some of them are shiny green, some of them are shiny blue, some of them are striped, some of them are fairly drab brown or black colored bees. But they all live this solitary existence where the female reproduces in nests that are located in a variety of locations, either underground, in stems, or other places. The other thing we've discovered about the solitary bees is many of them are very picky. Some of them will visit a large number of different flowers and crops. Others will visit one. And one example of that we've been learning about is the squash bee. The squash bee is the major pollinator of muskmelons, it turns out, and this squash bee is one of the solitary bees that we need to know more about and be able to preserve and protect because it's necessary for the pollination of cucurbits. To talk about the protection, the encouragement, and the management of these solitary bees, I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Thanks, Donald. When we think about encouraging all these solitary bees to be, on our farms and helping pollinate things, we kind of need to think about what they need. They're going to need food, they're going to need a place to live, and they're going to need protection from things like pesticides. So when you think of their food, in some instances like the squash bee, they feed very specifically, just on the muskmelon, but many other solitary bees feed on a variety of different flowers, and so having those flowers available is really helpful. It's important to have lots of different flowers blooming throughout the summer, so beyond just when your crop needs pollination, having flowers available at all times will certainly encourage them to be there on the farm. And next, protecting those nesting sites. So the nesting sites vary as many as the different species that we have. For instance, the squash bee nests in the ground. The female digs her tunnel down into the ground. She takes her pollen, she puts it down there in a ball, lays her egg on it. Her larvae feed on that pollen throughout the summer, and then they overwinter under the ground there. So things like tilling and stuff in the fall or early in the spring can kill those overwintering squash bees. And many other bees nest in the ground similarly. Some nest, like bumblebees and, just kind of leaf litter and things like that. Some are in rotten logs, brush piles, things like that. So all those sort of things and kind of thinking about whether or not bees could be using that for nests before, removing that log and things like that are helpful. And then finally, reducing pesticide use. So Obviously it's nice if you don't have to use any pesticides, we'd all like that, but sometimes when you have pests that are consuming your crop, it's necessary to come in and use an insecticide. So always remember that bees are insects too, and so it's very hard to find a product that won't hurt bees, but we can take steps to find what we call the least toxic products, and there's plenty of information available on what products are least harmful to bees. Using ones with a short residual life, so for instance, after they dry, they wouldn't be toxic to the bees. And then spraying in the evenings or other times of the day when they will dry out quickly before the bees are active. So all those things are steps that we can take on our farm to kind of encourage bees to be there and protect the ones that are there.
Again, the Specialty Crops Research Initiative has made much of this research possible, and we appreciate the funding that we have received for that. The protection and encouragement of these bees, the native bees, the solitary bees, and the social bees is important to cucurbit producers, and so we'll continue to research that as we go forward from here.